how are you? How is it there now that Great Britain finally invented some corona measures?
Well, fortunately, we are in the middle of nowhere. So you can more or less smell and see Holland from where we are. So whatever happens in this country doesn't really affect us. We are just about 10 miles south of Harwich. So all we have to do is take the ferry and get in and out. So I can't really tell you. I have no idea what is going on in this country, and it's too depressing to put on the news. It is quite sad.
It really is, given the figures and given what has not been done when it would have been time to do so.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But, you know, Germany has been lucky listening to its scientists and not trying to play political games. And the bizarre thing is, you see, you're working in economy, so you have an idea about numbers politicians do not seem to have. The power of E, of exponential natural growth, is a very alien concept, especially if you only study politics, philosophy, and God knows what. Yeah, it's very sad to see that so many people are able to be in power without having a sound mathematical or natural science background. And now it's biting the populations into the side where it hurts.
That's really sad. Maybe you know our Berlin minister, you'd say, or senator for health. That's Dilek Kalaishi. And she actually is not a politician in the proper sense. She is, of course, member of government now and has a political career, but she's a mathematician. And so I think for her, it was rather clear that this is not just, say, a virological problem, but a mathematical. Yep. 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, and within a month you'll have 1 million.
Yeah. If one person on the R rate of 3 infects in a 10th generation, 70,000 people are being hit. So in a very, very short period of time, one person with corona can basically infect a whole city like Göttingen, and I think we've just seen that.
Exactly. Yeah. So now, Johannes, you may have seen that I adapted a bit. Yeah. Look at my I'd say rural outfit. So that does not just go well with my southern origin, but also with your profession, I'd say.
Yes, it's all green. That's very good.
So tell us, what do we have to do if we now have to live with corona, or what do we have to change?
Yes. So, interestingly enough, over the history of the last 1,000 years, humans have learned to adapt to a number of illnesses. Black Death is one. We came through that. In recent times, we have learned to live with something like AIDS. We also live with malaria. All of these illnesses where there are no vaccine, but at least in the Western world, we can manage these diseases. So that's what we are going to do now. And we are going to learn to live with corona. So I think that will be all right. The hardship it will take on people's lives, families, is still in the balance, and it's sad for what is going to happen. But this is a virus. Our population will come through. So we just have to learn to adapt, and potentially there will be a vaccine. Potentially there will be cures. But it's absolutely amazing, in my opinion, how quick the medical system globally has understood or is beginning to understand what corona does to a human body. And that for a virus that has probably not moved into human populations longer than perhaps a year or 2 years ago. So the medical progress we are supporting, the scientific progress we are supporting, all of these listeners supporting through their taxes is repaying its due to society right now.
So we could say, well, it is a sad cause, but the effect is not just bad. So it's a boost for medical research. And as I would say, it's also a boost for digitalization, which is a big word. But what I mean is people also adapt to, well, work with all these online tools like we do. I think only, say, 4 months ago, we'd not have been on Zoom or Twitter or what all these devices are.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I would very much like to be sitting next to you now, holding this interview with you. But I think your industry, the banking industry, as well as mine, the scientific or museum world, we are on a very steep learning curve. We have been on a steep learning curve. In a way, this has been an amazing experience. So we had to decide, following the guidelines of the German and Berlin government, fairly rapidly into a home office. And we discussed it all before the shutdown came in Germany. We adapted all very, very well. People are as productive as they've been when we could work in the museum. Now, since the 11th of May, we have our visitors back, only 400 a day, but nevertheless better than none. And it's all done remotely. It's been an amazing learning curve for me personally, for my organization. However, I am old-fashioned in that I still prefer seeing people, being close to them, and hopefully we can resume that in Berlin again very, very soon.
This is what I hope very much too, and especially that we can have not a virtual one, but a real glass of beer, or in my case, as you know, a glass of wine.
Yes.
But I think you're absolutely right. The learning curve applied also to my profession. I should maybe explain that we are a bank, yes, but we are a governmental institution, 200 years old, and we are kindly obliged by law to serve the common good. So it's not in the first place about making profit. It's about serving the customers and the citizens of Berlin. Now, we've got, meanwhile, so there are about 4,000 employees, and more than half of them now work from home, or say on a mobile base. And the ratio is going up to 60 or 70%. So that was interesting. Also, we were talking to, about 5,000 of our corporate customers, small and medium enterprises. They were hit most by the crisis. Yeah. They had no revenues at all. Yeah. Just 12 hours after the crisis hit, there was no money anymore. So we were talking to them and tried to give them advice. Also, we closed down half of our branches, and that was a deliberate effort to support the policy of our government in order to show people how dangerous it is, how serious the situation is. So that was also a bit of a symbol. And now we try and find a new balance between mobile work, talking to people on the phone, having personal conversations again. But all in all, it was, just as you said, a very steep and rapid learning curve for our institution and our people as well.
Yeah, and as we've both talked about, digitization can quite often in organizations hit some buffers because people may prefer their comfort zones over new ways of working. And like the dear old Rothschilds used to say, a crisis is not only just the time to buy shares, it's perhaps also to implement change. And so here we are, and I think our organizations will come through this stronger and better. And what you've done, what you've described, staying in contact with your customers, being supportive, they will never forget that. And the same with us, we now have a very big digital offer of what we do, and we really have huge visitor numbers through the digital offer. And I think people really appreciate not just having to stare at white walls in their homes, but perhaps also being in touch with some of their beloved organizations.
Johannes, do you think I could raise another issue? Because I found something which you may have seen even on the countryside. I don't know whether you have any internet access there.
Yes, we do.
But you may remember that cover.
Yeah.
So the point was, yes, we all need to flatten the curve. But what the economist said was not just the epidemiological curve, the virus curve, but also the climate change curve. And what they say is, following the pandemic is like watching the climate crisis with your finger jammed on the fast forward button. Yes. So they see a clear relationship between the coronavirus, the pandemic, and climate change. What do you think? I mean, you are the expert.
It's getting even more interwoven. So we are all seeing these very strong racial tensions emerging.
Yeah.
And people asking for equality and racial justice. And especially in North America, the Hispanic and Afro-American community are most interested in measures, or have been in the last years, in measures to combat climate change, because they live in inner cities, and in inner cities which are heating up, they are most affected by the effects, the emerging effects from climate change. And then this really bizarre thing happens that we are all obliged to wear masks. You see, we both wear glasses. So having masks is a real big inconvenience, not just because it makes breathing heavier, but it also steams up our glasses and things like that. But then we all have to watch this appalling video where somebody is asking, stop this, I can't breathe. Perhaps something that we personally also have a very, very light touch of with these masks. So suddenly it becomes the climate change, the racial tension, and the COVID become intertwined. And as a biologist, this is the issue that is vexing me all the time, why people do not understand that everything is connected with everything. You tinker in one part of the system, like, for example, taking carbon that has been stored 300 million years ago in the form of coal, releasing it back into the atmosphere and thinking that nothing is happening. Yeah. It's unbelievable, that type of thinking. And now we are really, all of us, beginning to see the effects of climate change. Germany is experiencing its third year of drought, here in the UK as well. We really have to flatten the curve of climate change for our own sake. The restrictions, the hardship that COVID is imposing on us is peanuts, and it's very little in relation to what might come with a full-blown climate change. So if you think this is inconvenient, get ready for the big change, or let's all work together for change. Because the bizarre thing is, we have enough money in the system, we have enough smart brains, it's all there for change. It's just that the money that is now being pumped in shouldn't go into a continuation, into a perpetuation of the things that destroy the planet. Let's just create a green industry with all of this money now.
Yeah, this is what I would wish, and many others too, but also many others not. So there comes to my mind a related question. Now you would say, or we would say, the COVID-19 crisis gave us an idea a very vague, but an idea of what the climate crisis could be. At the same time, the COVID-19 crisis, sadly so, was good for nature. So blue sky again, less industrial production, less output, less pollution. But still, there's also, I think, a political issue. When COVID-19 was a bit of a relief for nature, it was bad for democracy. And I don't mean the restrictions within stable countries like France and Germany. That's not what I'm talking about. I think authoritarian regimes and dictators abused the crisis in order to become even more powerful and invent even more suppressive tools.
Yep. And
in the long run, this will also be bad for the climate, because it's the very same countries that do not believe in climate change, and they even less believe in doing something against it. Yep. So for me, there's also a very negative side when it comes to democracy and the dangers of the future.
Yeah, yes, you're absolutely right there. We have to work very hard to keep democracy going in Europe. And I would argue that in many countries, communities are being rediscovered, and the power of community, the power of supporting and helping each other. And I think that that will be forces that work against the tendencies you've just described. We have to hope and work for the better nature of mankind, and I think we can and we must.
So I think this brings us back to what we can do, we personally and also our institutions. If you just look around Europe, which is rather close, as we all know, close to us, see Poland, see Hungary, the authoritarian structure has been strengthened and the suppression has been going on. Or see Turkey, which is rather quite close too. Osman Kavala has been put into prison again without any reason by the Turkish president. So the dangers for democracy are there. Now, what can we do? And I think this is what I really like about our cooperation. It's not just about science and strengthening research. It's also about democracy. Yep. Because when we succeed in convincing people that there is something like a fact, and not everything is fake, and not everything is just mere opinion, I think that will be good for democracy. This is what I think is our mission.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You want a economically literate citizenry. I want a scientifically literate citizenry, because only if you learn how to exercise judgment can you actually achieve freedom, and thereby can make choices. So both are important attributes, economic and scientific literacy, for a healthy and sustainable democracy or knowledge society. And we really have to put a lot more effort into it. And what COVID in a strange way has also demonstrated to me is that many organizations perhaps have neglected that, looking after that. We think that there are some organizations we can just farm it out to, like schools. Well, suddenly schools are closed. Yeah, what do you do then? We really need to think again about what actually the purpose of business, the purpose of museums, the purpose of the overall economy has to be in the future. It cannot be to maximize profits for shareholders. That can be part of the overall game, but the common good, and especially maintaining and supporting democracy in Germany and elsewhere, has to be an important part of the endeavor.
That's very true, and I think what we need politically is not what we do need is a debate on climate change, of course, but also about democracy and the common good.
Yep.
So it's not about profit, or let me put it that way. It's the economy that has to serve the citizens, the people and the community. So the economy and businesses must always be a means, but never the end. This is a bit of Kant and leads back to the literacy, but I think it's very important.
But look, how many organizations, how many business organizations are there, like your business, the Sparkasse, that has a 200-year history? Yeah, there are very, very few organizations in business that have survived that long. What does that tell you? You are a public good orientated organization. Perhaps that has sustained you through enormous upheavals, regime changes, wars, and whatever. Whereas the organizations we now admire, the $1 trillion Googles, Facebooks, they are perhaps ephemeral. Who knows? They haven't been around long. They haven't proven their worth, not even for a generation of people. Your organization has served people with a common good agenda for at least now 8, probably 9 generations. A human generation is roughly calculated at 25 years. So has others. We have shown sustainability and staying power, and all the organizations that are being admired in the press or in the business press are probably just ephemeral and going to end up on the heap of history before you can spell their names. It's a very interesting game we are in. We have to look for the long term. We have to look for sustainability for our organizations, and that has to be a different game than just trying to be a $1 trillion stock listed company.
Yes, I always say we've got a dual mission. One is to serve the local community and the people here, the citizens of Berlin. And second is to be around in, say, 200 years too, in order to be able to do so. And that's different. It's a balance.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. And it requires leadership and not just narcissism.
So what are we going to do now? We don't want to, well, remember those large skeletons, the dinosaurs in your great hall. Yes. Fascinating as they are, we don't want to look like them in, say, 10 or 20 years, do we? So what are we going to do? We just set up a series of talks and discussions next to the dinosaurs, which are about the facts, the science, and what can citizens do about that.
Yeah. Yes, I think, well, I mean, our teams are talking already. I think we need to see how we can do what we've done in our organizations to a broader audience, how we can move some of what we do into the digital realm. We are learning a lot how to do that. And perhaps we can invite a broader participation that way. You see, even if we cram our dinosaur hall full, standing you get 700, seated you get 250 in. We had now events digitally with up to 5,000 people. So I think there's a lot more audience that can be reached. And I'm a great believer in the type of topics our two organizations cover. So I think we have to work there. But the other thing is really to look at in the medium long term where we can make a difference in the overall education system, how we can help people to become stronger, more resilient in their lives and in their economic situations, and perhaps in their ideas about nature and sustainability. We really need to put our best brains together there to come up with a number of smart ways of dealing with that. The old ways haven't really worked, so we need to find something new.
And there, I've got a second message for you. It was just lying on the table when I entered the room.
Yes, yes. Going digital is an enormous thing. But as humans, we also, as we've explained earlier on, we like to be with other humans. We like to be close to them, smell them, touch them, and so on and so forth. That will be a big change, and digital cannot really replace that. Now, you are coming over crystal clear there, and it's beautiful to see you in that clarity. But again, I have to say, it's not the same as being in the same room, and digital will not be able to replace that. It will augment what we do, but yeah, we need to see how we do it. However, for business, for education, for many other important parts, digitization will now come in big steps. That is undoubtedly so.
It's undoubtedly a boost, yes. And what came to my mind when we were talking about, say, our common mission, which is about education, literacy, or to use the old-fashioned German word, Mündigkeit,
yeah,
what you can find in the philosophy of the Enlightenment, Mündigkeit, literacy. Who do you think should we ask about what we should do? Because it's not, well, the audience must be different from us ourselves. If we want to reach a broader audience, we need to ask other people and include them in our thinking.
Well, to be honest, so while we ended up in completely different professions, we are now in positions of responsibility, but we will have relatively simple vitas that got us to where we are. And that the type of educational background one has, the family background one has, that gives all of us a particular view of life, which is perhaps not a view of life or an experience that is shared by all. So I think the next job we have to do, and especially museums, is to go out and actually talk to people where they live and ask them in relation to their needs, ambitions, and interests, what we could do to become more interesting, more relevant in their lives. There may be people who we will never be able to reach, but others might give us a lot of interesting hints, and then we have to adapt to what they want and not try to expect that they are just like we are, and so we can carry on as we are. The difference there is, you as a bank have to have customers. You cannot exist without paying customers. For museums, that sometimes does not matter that much. Of course, we love visitors, but we are sort of protected from that. And yeah, you are in a much stronger position. You have to learn faster than museums sometimes seem to have had to in the past. I think all of this is over, so let's learn together.
This is exactly what we should do, not just ask those who come to us or go online and ask them, but go out into the Berlin wilderness.
Yeah.
As a proper scientist and researcher, go like Alexander von Humboldt and see the wild areas of Berlin.
Or Jutta Almendinger.
Which from your point of view belong to the wild areas, doesn't she?
Well, no, she certainly goes there, yes.